Hi, I'm Jim Swanstrom, and welcome to the 3M Walleye Instructional Series. Over the next 40 minutes, you're going to enjoy the best one-on-one teachings available in America today. We'll help you learn to consistently catch America's most popular game fish, the walleye. From this Walleye Mastery video, you'll learn a simple, yet extremely effective system that will enable you to go to any walleye water and quickly figure out where walleyes will be and what techniques to use to catch them. This tape is designed to help you truly master walleye fishing. You'll find that walleyes are generally low-key feeders that won't make a great effort to grab your bait or lure. Herein lies the reason for this tape, to teach you just what makes a walleye tick. You'll learn how to consistently catch walleyes with techniques and presentations proven by masters. To do this, we'll start by going walleye fishing with professional outdoor writer Jeff Howard. Few people have the credentials to teach about walleyes that Jeff has. Having been born and raised in the lake country of northern Minnesota, Jeff developed a fascination with walleyes at an early age. Later, he took that fascination and desire to learn to the University of Minnesota, where he earned a degree in fisheries and wildlife research. That combination of outdoor experience, education, and ability to communicate has led Jeff to become a prolific outdoor writer and teacher. He is well known for his many articles, book contributions, and research on walleye fishing. Let's join Jeff now.
Like a lot of people, I feel catching walleyes is one of the most exciting and satisfying experiences in fishing, mostly because a bunch of walleyes rarely come easy. Unless you have a good knowledge of walleye habits and master the right fishing techniques to catch them, you're not going to catch walleyes consistently. So yeah, walleyes are hard to catch, but they're not impossible. The first thing you need to do is put walleyes and walleye fishing into perspective. Like any fish, walleyes are controlled by their environment. Everything they do and every place they go is to satisfy one of three basic needs: food, comfort, and reproduction. Let's talk about food first. Much of a walleye's daily movements are to find food to eat. Minnows, perch, insect larvae, and some terrestrial creatures are all favorite walleye foods. Through time, walleyes learn that these food species thrive in certain areas within a body of water, so the walleyes in turn go to these places to eat. To satisfy their need for comfort, walleyes make regular movements to stay within certain temperature parameters. Like other fish, walleyes are cold-blooded, and their bodies take on the temperature of the water surrounding them. Now, if they remain in water that is too warm or too cold, they soon start to become sluggish and may even perish unless they can find water of the right temperature. In most cases, walleyes prefer to remain in water from 65 to 75 degrees. At times, walleyes may make brief forays into warmer or cooler water to satisfy another need, like feeding or spawning, but they will always return to the more comfortable water. Another part of comfort is protection from larger predators. Now, usually walleyes are not preyed upon by larger fish, but in some cases, big northern pike and muskies will prey upon walleyes. Probably the most common predator is us, the walleye fishermen. Walleyes will make movements to avoid water skiers, approaching boats, and other human disturbances. The final need that controls where a walleye will be found is reproduction or spawning. Walleyes are a spring spawning fish. When water temperatures rise into the upper 30s, walleyes move in from deep water to their preferred spawning sites, usually at night.
A common spawning site for walleyes are shallow incoming rivers with a rocky gravel bottom. Once the female drops her eggs and the male fertilizes them, the small eggs adhere to the tiny stones in the stream bottom. The flowing water then gently washes the eggs and keeps them free from suffocating silt until the tiny fry emerge from the eggs.
In many states and provinces, walleye season is set so fishing is not allowed during spawning periods, so spawning will not have an impact on your fishing. But sometimes, spawning periods can have a dramatic effect during the first few weeks of walleye season. The key to finding walleyes in any body of water is being able to recognize the spots that will satisfy their basic needs. You've heard the old adage that 90% of the walleyes are found in 10% of the lake. Now, while those figures may not be entirely accurate, the principle is very true.
In most cases, these spots are some sort of configuration on the lake or river bottom, like an underwater island or point, a gravel bar, or a submerged weed bed. These underwater walleye spots are often referred to as structures.
Unlike other game fish that are usually found near some sort of visible cover, like largemouth bass near emergent weeds, trout in pockets behind boulders, or crappies near fallen trees, most walleye structure is many feet underwater and not visible. This, of course, can complicate finding walleyes and can be quite intimidating when you're fishing a new lake. That's why one of the most important tools you can have is an electronic fish finder. These units can tell you the depth you are fishing and display any fish there. Now locator manufacturers have taken advantage of modern technology and offer graphs with liquid crystal displays that show a cross-section of the bottom and show fish as tiny fish symbols. And this is the kind we'll be using throughout this series.
The way any locator gathers information is through the transducer. These are usually mounted on the rear of the boat and connected to the locator by a cable. The transducer sends pulses down to the bottom that bounce and return back to the transducer. Your locator then electronically calculates the time it takes to get the return signal and interprets that into feet to display it on your locator. Your unit can also display weeds, submerged trees, fish, and other bottom cover.
Electronic locators may seem high-tech and complicated, but they're really quite easy to use. There are a few controls to adjust to get the best signal, while on the newer models, you can program them to work automatically.
The best way to use a locator to find good walleye structure is to get a lake map and then note any good-looking walleye structures on it. Then get a few bearings from the shoreline and start looking with your locator.
Another way to find and return a good walleye structure is with a Loran unit. These navigational guides are the same thing that ocean-going vessels and airplanes use to record their position and navigate.
Throughout the world are radio towers that send out signals that are picked up by Loran antennas. When a unit receives a signal, it can record the latitude and longitude of your position. Once a position, or waypoint as they're called, is recorded in the memory of the Loran, it can direct you right back to the spot.
As I stated earlier, many good walleye structures are in deep water with no visual guides to tell you where they are. So when you're sitting over a sunken bar or island and you want to come back, all you do is program the Loran to record your position, and then the unit can lead you right back anytime you want. You'll notice that I'll be constantly using my locator and my Loran to find good walleye fishing spots. Again, these are your underwater eyes, and a good walleye fisherman is lost without them. Probably more walleyes have been caught on live bait slip sinker rigs than any other kind of walleye fishing tackle. And there's good reason for that. These rigs were specifically designed to catch walleyes, and they perfectly suit the finicky bites and nibbles that walleyes are famous for. Let's take a Lindy rig, which was the first manufactured walleye live bait rig that I know of. Let me show you how it works.
As you can see, you have a small hook snelled on a long leader of light monofilament that is attached to your line with a swivel. Threaded on your line is a uniquely shaped slip sinker that is designed to slide over rocks and other bottom debris that other slip sinkers may snag on. The swivel acts as a stop to keep the sinker from sliding down to your hook as you troll or retrieve the rig. Usually a live bait rig is fished while trolling or drifting, but you can also cast and slowly work it back to you. As you slowly move along, hold the line with your forefinger, like so, and leave the bail open. That way, when you get a strike, you can quickly release the line so the walleye can take the bait without feeling any resistance at all. When a walleye grabs your bait, the vibrations from the strike travel up the line to the rod so you can feel it. Then you immediately let go of the line and let the walleye move off with the bait or do whatever it wants. The important thing is that the walleye feels no resistance as the line freely slides through the sinker eye. Then, once you're certain the walleye has the hook, you can set it.
When to set the hook can be a perplexing problem. If you set it too early before the walleye gets a hook in its mouth, all you're going to get is a torn minnow or a shredded night crawler.
This is particularly true with night crawlers that are strung out with only a single hook at the front. It's easy for a walleye to just grab the tail and never get the hook in its mouth. Now with minnows or leeches, it's easier. Minnows are smaller and compact enough so a walleye usually grabs them in one bite. Leeches are the same. When they get hit by a walleye, they ball up and go down the hatch all at once.
So when you're live bait rigging with a minnow or a leech and you get a hit, just let it run for a second and then set the hook. But if you're fishing with a night crawler now, you need to let the walleye eat up the night crawler. So feed it line until you're sure that the walleye has the hook in its mouth. Then you can set the hook.
Some people like to count to 15 or even up to 30 before setting the hook.
You'll find that during the course of a day that walleyes will seem to establish a pattern on how fast or how slow they'll take down a crawler. So what I do on the first walleye of the day, I'll use a little gentle line pressure, a little line feeding, and I'll give that walleye plenty of time to take that crawler down. And then I'll treat the rest of the walleyes the same way for the rest of the day. Okay, now what we have here is a sunken island that is connected to shore by an underwater ridge. And as you can see from looking at the locator, the top of that ridge then does drop down and merges with the main lake basin. Now I've found walleyes along the line where the structure merges with the main lake basin. So what I'm going to do is follow my locator and then slowly move the boat so it pulls the live bait rig right through those walleyes. But before we start fishing, we want to make sure that night crawler is up where the walleyes can see it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give the crawler just a tiny shot of air so it floats up. Okay, that's perfect. When you're ready to fish, just drop the weight straight down until it hits bottom.
There, you saw it hit bottom when the line stopped coming off the reel. Now, if you need to let more line out to keep the sinker in the bottom, just let some more slip off.
Now there's a few ways we can use to move the boat over those walleyes now. One of which is we can use the wind to let us drift us over the fish. We could use the electric trolling motor to pull us over the fish, but what we're going to do is we're going to use the outboard and we're going to troll backwards over those fish. Now regardless if you drift or use one of the motors, you've got to do so slowly. You've got to give those walleyes lots of time to come up and grab that crawler. Now this is where a smooth running outboard is very important.
You'll notice we don't troll very quickly. You want to just slowly move along at a speed that slides the bait right through the spot you found the walleyes. You want to make it as easy as possible for the walleyes to grab the bait.
While Jeff is fishing, let me give you a few more tips for fishing live bait. Always check your line after a fish or two to see if there are any nicks in the line. The walleye's teeth usually won't cut the line, but their pointed teeth will wear it and weaken it. Let's go through the techniques for hooking bait. With a leech, you can hook it through the sucker. Actually, this is the rear of the leech, but it doesn't seem to make any difference. The sucker end lets you hook the leech more securely than the tiny front end. In many cases, you'll find that fishing a plain minnow, leech, or night crawler is all you'll need to catch walleyes. Occasionally, adding a little color or flash will draw more hits. Some options you can add to your snell are tiny spinners, colorful slip floats, or even floating jig heads. These are all available through most tackle stores, or you can make them up yourself. With all of this hardware to choose from, and the techniques we've just shared with you, we're sure you'll find live bait rigs a super way to fish walleyes.
More walleyes have been caught using live bait than any other fishing presentation. So, if you're going to master walleye fishing, you're going to have to learn how to use live bait. But first you're going to have to become familiar with each kind of live bait and learn how to take care of it.
The three best baits for walleyes are minnows, night crawlers, and leeches. Now other live baits like frogs and some insect larvae are also used, but these tend to be specialty baits or are used on a brief seasonal basis. It is very important to make sure your bait is fresh and lively. Walleyes will often grab a frisky minnow or healthy-looking crawler, but will totally ignore sickly-looking lifeless baits. So you'll need to keep your bait in special containers that keep your bait cool and fresh. When you buy minnows, have the salesman oxygenate the minnows and place them in a cooler with ice. Then when you're fishing, a good way to keep them is in a trolling-style minnow bucket. Night crawlers should be kept in containers like this, filled with worm-bedding material. This one here happens to have small water bottles you can freeze to keep the crawlers cool. Never leave night crawlers in the sun or you'll wind up with a real mess. Leeches should also be kept cool. They can be stored in the cooler along with your minnows, or in a smaller container with ice added every once in a while.
Again, you're probably going to catch more walleyes on live bait than any artificial lure, but that's only if you know how to take care of live bait and you know how to use it.
More walleyes are probably caught on live bait than lures. However, there are times when lures work better. The best example is a crankbait. Crankbaits are lures that imitate minnows and other small fish that walleyes eat. They have a long lip that pulls them down when you retrieve them, which make them a good lure for getting down to the deep walleyes. You'll find catching walleyes on crankbaits is usually more fun than getting them on live bait rigs. Walleyes that discover your bait will normally gulp it gently down, but that same walleye will smash a crankbait with a vicious strike. That's one of the reasons a crankbait works well for walleyes. They create a strong strike reflex in fish, and an aggressive walleye will chase it down and strike it hard. Crankbaits work really well when walleyes are aggressive. A jig or a live bait rig does not give off the flash or vibration a crankbait does, so walleyes detect crankbaits from a greater distance. You'll also find that walleyes in large groups are much more competitive and will hit your crankbait more often than walleyes in small groups. The best crankbaits for walleyes are longer, thinner models that imitate walleye forage like smelt, minnows, or small perch. Walleyes have a relatively small mouth when compared to bass or northern pike, so short, fat crankbaits that imitate panfish are not recommended for walleyes. The way to select the proper crankbait is to find what depth the walleyes are at by seeing them and finding them on your locator. Different crankbaits are designed to run at different depths. For example, this one runs at 15 to 20 feet, or this one runs at 6 to 8 feet. The depth the crankbait runs at is mostly determined by the length of the lip. As the longer the lip, the deeper it runs. The best rod for crankbaits depends on the lure you choose. Minnow-style baits are very light and are easier to cast than with a spinning rod. Heavier-style crankbaits can easily be casted with a bait casting outfit. I'm fishing with a medium-action casting rod and reel today with 12-pound mono. If you want to go lighter, 10-pound is fine, or 17 is about as heavy as you want to go. The key to a crankbait's effectiveness is its wobble and vibration, so it's important that you attach the lure to your line in a way that won't hamper the lure's action. Many crankbaits have a split ring attached that will work, or you can tie the lure on with a loop knot, like a Duncan's loop, which lets the lure work freely, or around its snap. Either way, your crankbait will have good action. For shallow structure under 10 feet deep, casting your lure works perfect. These crankbaits work really well in that depth of water. When you get into the deeper water, you'll want to troll your lure. Before getting down to serious fishing, I always make a few practice casts to see if the crankbait is running straight. Crankbaits can be knocked out of tune and run crooked, which usually seems to turn off walleyes. You want the lure to work evenly, side to side. If it's running crooked, you have to turn the eye slightly to one side or the other to get it running straight. Just give it a small twist and try it. What we've got right here is a crested hump that comes out at 20 feet and levels off at 6 feet. What I'm doing is casting past the top of the hump and retrieving my lure so that it comes over the top and then swoops down the side past feeding walleyes. Here are some little hints that'll help you control the depth and the action of your crankbait. First, alternate the speed of your retrieve. Secondly, every once in a while, give it a little twitch. It gives it more of a lifelike motion and causes it to jerk to the side. Now, don't worry if your crankbait hits a rock or a weed. In fact, it can work to your advantage. The sound of your crankbait hitting a rock seems to call walleyes. Actually, you should occasionally retrieve your lure so that it hits rocks or digs in along the bottom. Oh, there's a hit. Another lure I like to use for walleye is the spinner live bait rig. It's especially good for trolling. Like a jig, a spinner combines the flash and attraction of a lure with the taste and scent of live bait. A spinner rig is made up of a spinner blade and beads strung on a heavy monofilament leader with a snelled hook. Some spinner rigs have a series of hooks in tandem for hooking on night crawlers, but you can just as easily use leeches or minnows. The best way to fish with spinner live bait rigs is to troll over good walleye structure like bars, reefs, and submerged islands. To get the lure down to the walleyes, all you have to do is add a rubber core sinker about 2 feet above the spinner. You may have to experiment with different size weights to get the rig down to run right over the bottom. In lakes where walleyes use submerged weeds for cover, a good way to troll this rig is to just barely drag it over the tops of the weeds. You may or may not need a rubber core sinker. If you clip the top of the weeds, you know that you're fishing this rig at the right depth. Fishing this rig over weeds is particularly good at night during the hot summer months when walleyes feed a lot after dark. You'll find that spinner color can be very important. There are certain colors that walleyes will ignore, but then they'll eagerly hit another color. Some spinner colors that have proven to be successful over the years are orange, chartreuse, and yellow. But the only way to really know what the most productive color is to experiment. Here's a new kind of rig that has a quick change spinner that makes it easy to change colors and experiment. All you do is remove the spinner blade from the special clevis and snap in another. For this kind of fishing, I like to use a level wind reel and a fairly stiff casting rod. 8 to 17 pound test mono is the best to use. Long periods of trolling can make your arms tire, so a rod with a long butt like this that you can tuck inside your arm is best. As you can see, trolling or casting lures can be very effective for catching walleyes. By using these methods I've talked about and discovering your personal ways to modify the presentations, you'll find lots of ways to catch walleyes on lures.
Fishing with lead head jigs is one of the most incredibly effective methods there are for catching walleyes. In fact, you'll find that no matter where you fish, whether it's on a western reservoir, a northern natural lake, Canadian Shield Lake, or even one of the Great Lakes, you'll find that jigging is one of the most common techniques used to catch walleyes. So let's take a moment and look at some of the jigs that you can use. Now, jigs are really simple lures. They're basically a hook with a molded lead head for weight. Most jigs have some sort of body or dressing for added attraction. Like this one here has a feather body that pulsates in the water. This one here has a tinsel tail that's added for extra flash. Now, floss-bodied jigs like this one have a slim profile in the water. But the most popular jig for walleyes have soft plastic bodies. These bodies are durable and have a soft, natural feel when the walleye bites down on it. You'll also notice that jigs come in different shaped heads. Now, the most common is a ball-shaped jig head, which is sort of a general-purpose jig. This is a stand-up style head that sits in an upright position when it rests on the bottom. Now, this here is a teardrop-shaped head that falls quickly to the bottom. There are other kinds of specially shaped jig heads for certain situations, but you'll find that the ball-shaped head is perfect for most cases. But perhaps the best reason why jigs are so good for walleyes is their versatility. You can make a jig do anything you want it to do to match the mood of the walleyes. Now, if you suspect the walleyes are slow to bite, you can gently inch the jig across the bottom and make it very easy for those walleyes to grab it. Now, on the other hand, if the walleyes are aggressive, you can work the jig in big hops so that more walleyes can see it. Again, you're in control of the jig, and you can use the jig to match the situation that the walleyes are in. When you're fishing with a jig, it's your job to get the jig down to the walleyes and fish it where the fish can see it and bite it. Now, this may mean that you have to anchor and cast to the walleyes. It may mean that you'll have to troll or drift while you jig. But don't get your mind set on a particular way to do it. Let each condition dictate how you do it and how you can get that jig down to the walleyes most effectively. All right, where we're fishing here is right along the edge of the main lake basin. Now, the basin is full of mud and weeds and things like that. Now, on our graph, we found an underwater point that's jutting out into Lake Basin. That point is made up of rock and gravel, which is something walleyes like, and sure enough, there's a school of walleyes sitting right over it. The most obvious concern when choosing a jig is the weight of the head. Now, here are 3 jigs that are the same color and style, but different weights. This one here is 1/16 ounce jig. Here's a 1/4 ounce, and here's a 3/8 ounce jig. You'll want to choose the one that sinks to the walleyes pretty quickly and that keeps your line fairly tight. And if the jig sinks too slowly, slack will form on your line, and you won't feel the strike when a walleye does bite. Most walleye fishermen tie the jig to their line with a double clinch or tri-lean knot. It's a very strong knot that's easy to tie. Just pass the line through the hook eye twice to form a loop. Wrap the end around the line 5 or 6 times, and then insert back through the loop and tighten. The best rod and reel combination for jigging is a light action graphite spinning rod and reel. Now, I'm using a 6-foot rod with a high quality reel spooled with 6-pound test mono. When jigging, the only way to detect bites is to feel the subtle strike when a walleye takes your bait. Either that or you'll see slack form in your line. Either way, it's very important to have a sensitive rod. The handle in this rod is made of graphite, just like the rod itself, and it's very sensitive. This allows me to feel even more strikes than rods where the reel is connected to cork or foam handles. I'm going to attach a minnow to the jig for extra attraction here. I'm just going to run the hook through the minnow's lips like this. And you can also hook on a leech or piece of nightcrawler. Sometimes you'll catch just as many walleyes without adding a bait to jig at all, but by far you'll do much better in the long run if you add live bait. I've stopped the boat just a short distance away from where the school of walleyes is sitting on that gravel bar. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cast out and give the jig plenty of time to settle straight down to the bottom. Now it's the middle of the day and I suspect those walleyes aren't too aggressive, so I'm going to just use a short twitching retrieve to give them plenty of time to see the bait and strike it. I'm just going to twitch the lure along in small hops and give it just a little action while hesitating frequently to give the walleyes time to easily grab it. Now, if I suspected the walleyes were a little bit turned off, I'd use a slow sliding retrieve, just barely dragging the jig along the bottom. Now, if the walleyes are active and really snapping, I'd use a hopping action that was more visible to the walleyes. Or even swim the jig through the walleyes like a regular spoon or other lure. The way to give action to the lure is to lift the rod by flexing your wrist. I like to keep it in the 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock position. Always keep the line as straight as possible to the jig. When walleyes grab a lure, sometimes they don't move very much, so all you'll feel is a slight bump or just a very slight jerk. So it's very important to keep your line straight, because if you're not concentrating or if you have slack in your line, you may not feel a thing. When you do feel a walleye hit, set the hook immediately. Some experienced walleye fishermen say to wait a second before setting the hook, but a jig is a pretty compact bait that a walleye will grab in one go. If you get short strikes, make up a stinger rig by tying a number 10 treble hook on a 3-inch piece of monofilament, or use one of these pre-tied stingers offered at tackle stores. Then just hook the treble in the tail of the minnow. This lets you quickly set the hook and nail any short striking walleyes. Again, no matter where you're fishing or what mood the walleyes are in, jigging will be one of the most effective ways you can find to catch walleyes.
The largemouth bass. If you want to tackle the hard-hitting action of America's favorite game fish, the 3M Sportsman's video collection has a complete series of original programs that'll make you the best bass angler on your water. There's Big Mouth, a classic film that puts you in the bass's world, years in the making, edited from miles of incredible underwater footage. You'll see the secrets of bass behavior and why they're so challenging and exciting to catch. Nobody understands big bass better than Doug Hannon, the bass professor. In the Hannon Big Bass videos, you'll learn the newest, most innovative ideas about finding and catching bass. Through amazing underwater photography, you'll see how bass detect and strike lures. You'll learn to recognize the locations that hold big bass. And when you're ready to tie into one of these lunkers, Doug will show you his complete system for going after really big bass. The special lures, the necessary equipment and skills. Doug prepares you to catch the bass of a lifetime. For a look at bass fishing from top to bottom, spend a day on the water with championship fisherman Ricky Clun. Ricky will show you how to find bass fast in unfamiliar waters and catch them with all the top techniques, from worm fishing to flipping. When you understand the whys behind the sport, the how-tos make a lot more sense. That's the secret of our trail-breaking Bass Mastery series with Al Lindner. Al shows you the basic principles behind his ability to catch more and bigger bass. With Al's formula for success, you'll be able to locate the bass hotspots, know what the fish are doing, and then select the right presentation. You'll catch more bass more consistently under a wide range of conditions. In the active spring period, Al shows you how to deal with the rapidly changing conditions of spring as the bass go through pre-spawn, spawn, and post-spawn patterns. It's the fast and efficient way to springtime fishing excitement. You can beat the dog days of July and August and still catch bass when few other anglers know what to do. Weather changes, human pressure, the effects of light and shade. You'll be able to master them all when you learn Al's surefire strategies for summer. In the Trophy Bass of Fall, Al shows you how to find those tight groups of really big cold water bass. Discover why fall conditions offer the best opportunity to land a trophy. The Bass Mastery programs. No other videos do more to develop all your angling skills. How to interpret local conditions, how to find bass, and how to pick the right lures. 3M Bass Fishing Videos. We're the best at making you better. And if you love fishing, hunting, and other sports, think of 3M as your total video resource for outdoor adventure. The gentle beauty of a deep forest glade. The heart-pounding excitement of a trophy buck in rut. Going one-on-one with North America's most popular big game animal. That's what deer hunting's all about. And nobody brings you more in-depth information and true life action than the 3M Sportsman's video collection. The excitement of calling a bird into your gun. The satisfaction of making a clean shot. And the companionship of a well-trained dog. If you like the challenge of upland game bird and waterfowl hunting, 3M Sportsman's video collection gives you the thrill of being there and the knowledge you need to master the sport. If it's excitement you're after, come fishing with the experts from 3M Scientific Anglers and learn ways to catch more and bigger trout on the fly. You'll learn where to find trout in a stream and ways to present the right fly with the perfect cast so you can catch the most elusive trout during hatch and non-hatch situations. Plus, there's steelheading for 20-pound rainbows or going for the ultimate saltwater challenge. Let 3M Scientific Anglers bring home the excitement while you learn a lifetime of mastery techniques that will help you become the best fly fisherman you can be.